Hi, this is Rudy Jones of PalmettoStateBaseball.com, and welcome to That Was the Week That Was for South Carolina College Baseball for April the 2nd. I hope you like my new background. I'm trying something out. I still haven't figured out green screen productions to do better, more prominent things, but what better thing to have in the background than the state flag, the most beautiful state flag in the country. Let's look at some things that happened indirectly away from the results of the field. On Wednesday, Preston McDonald of Florence Darlington Tech got his 500th career coaching victory. He's in his 13th season with the Stingers. They won the last two NJCAA Region 10 tournament championships. They are currently 13-0 in the league, 36-5 overall, and have won their last 13 games. But congratulations to Coach McDonald for the milestone win. On Thursday, Clemson announced it would be retiring the number 7 jersey of Jack Leggett, the former longtime head coach there. Jack won 955 games at Clemson in 22 seasons. 21 of 22 teams went to the NCAA playoffs. You just think about that for a minute. That is quite a record. But some of the Clemson fans got a little bit tired of Jack, I guess, by the end of his tenure, and they wanted to see a change. They did replace him with Monty Lee, and Jack was not involved in the program for a while. But now with Eric Bakich taking over as head coach, he has invited Jack, who he was an assistant coach for at Clemson, to come back as the consultant for player, staff, and program development. And it's good to see number 7 back in the dugout, and he'll be honored during Clemson's home game with Notre Dame on April the 15th with having his jersey retired. A great honor for Jack. He is an excellent baseball coach. On Saturday, Russell Triplett, a former Clemson player, got his 376th career coaching win at Newberry. That allowed him to tie Tim Medlin for all-time wins at Newberry. On Sunday, the Wolves got 2 more wins to give him 378 career wins, moving ahead of Tim Medlin to be the all-time victory leader. Of course, Tim is still active in coaching. He's at USC Sumter, and they're having another good season there. It's usually one of the top 2 or 3 programs in Junior College Region 10. So Tim is still having success as a coach, just like he did at Newberry. Looking back to some of the results from this past week, just going to kind of go over what's going on. I'm going to wing it a little bit. Coastal Carolina was my choice for Team of the Week for this past week. The Chanticleers moved into the national rankings in a couple of polls for the first time in the regular season at number 19 in D1 baseball. Tuesday, they went out and they scored 8 runs in the 8th inning and beat number 13 North Carolina up at Chapel Hill, so that was a good one for them. On the weekend, they got opened up with a win over Georgia State in Pantherville, as they call it, suburban Atlanta. Saturday, the Chanticleers fell behind 8-0 after 3 innings, came back, got 3 runs in about the 4th inning. In the 6th inning, they scored 6 runs to take the lead, added another run, and wound up winning 10-8 after trailing 8-0. Pretty nice comeback. But they weren't through. On Sunday, Georgia State took the lead late in the game. Coastal came up and scored 3 runs in the 9th to tie it, forced extra innings. They got 2 runs in the 10th, and then they won it. So they had 3 comeback wins, and as part of a 4-0 week, they're now at 19-7. In my NCAA Division I rankings for the state, I've got South Carolina at number 1. Of course, they had a 3-1 week this week. Beat the Citadel midweek down at the Joe in Charleston. They beat Mississippi State on Thursday. On Friday, they suffered a run rule loss to Mississippi State. And then on Saturday, they won again with a late rally. They scored 11 runs in their final 3 at-bats to win that game 14-5. The Gamecocks are still showing a tendency to struggle to score when they don't hit home runs. But they hit enough home runs the first couple of games, and then on Saturday in the series finale, they did indeed put together some crooked numbers without the benefit of home runs. So that's something that will, I'm sure, benefit the Gamecocks later on if they can keep doing that. Coming up this weekend, played North Carolina in Charlotte on Tuesday. Then on the weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they play host to number 1 LSU. One thing I think the Gamecocks ought to worry about, whether they do or not, is batter strikeouts. They struck out a bunch at Mississippi State. Yeah, if you're hitting home runs, it's okay, but there are going to be times when you just need to make contact, move runners along. Again, they did that better in Saturday's win than they had earlier in the week. I mentioned Coastal Carolina having the 4-0 week. I've got them number 2 in my rankings. Clemson, I've got as number 3 among state Division I teams. I moved them up 2 spots. Well, you say, why did you do that? They went 1-3 against number 2 Wake Forest. Well, they did beat College of Charleston, my previous number 2, on Tuesday night in Clemson. That gave them a sweep of the 2-game series. Excuse me, they were at Sagar Park in Columbia. Gave them a sweep of the 2-game season series. And then on the weekend, they did play Wake Forest close. Wake got some runs late to beat the Tigers. Friday night again, Clemson had some late struggles in losing, but they are still a pretty good team. Maybe not to the level that Clemson fans want them to be, but it's still a pretty good team. I think one encouragement for Clemson is that Caden Grice is starting to come along with his offense. He's also been pitching more regularly lately, and he's pitching pretty well. A lot of strikeouts, maybe a few more walks than he would have liked in his outing against Wake Forest, but I think that's an encouraging sign. Hopefully, Clemson will be getting Ryan Ammons back before long. He's been out with an injury, and maybe that'll give their pitching staff a little bit more of a boost. They are at Florida State this week, and can you imagine going into the season if somebody told you that Florida State would be 6th and Clemson would be 7th in the ACC's Atlantic Division? Would you have believed them? That's just the way that things is. Baseball is such a unusual game. Any team can beat another team. Speaking of that situation, Wofford had a 3-0 week going until it lost to Siena on Sunday. That snapped a 15-game losing streak for Siena and was only its 3rd win in 27 games so far this season, 3-24. It was also the end of a 27-game season-opening road swing for Siena, so they get to go home soon. It's still a good week for Wofford, even though they did lose one. I'm sure they felt like they should have gotten a sweep. But they did have a week out of Southern Conference play before they get back in this week. I have College of Charleston at number 5 in my rankings this week. They lost 3 games, that midweek game to Clemson. And they also went up and lost 3 to Delaware in Colonial Athletic Association play. Delaware had a losing record in the conference prior to that. And I'm sure that Coach Chad Holbrook feels like his team should have performed better than they did up there. USC Upstate got 2 out of 3 against Winthrop. They did lose the series finale on Sunday. I've got them at number 6. Followed by the Citadel. Citadel had a tough week. They lost the game to South Carolina midweek. Then they went down to Sanford and lost all 3 games. Sanford's usually one of the better programs in the Southern Conference, even though they keep getting raided by SEC teams to get some of their good talent out. Presbyterian went 1-3 this week. They won the opener against UNC Asheville in Big South Conference play. Suffered a tough loss on Saturday, giving up the final 5 runs of the game over 2 innings to lose that one, and then they lost Sunday. Winthrop is at 9th in my Division I ratings in the state. They got the series finale against USC Upstate, and then in 10th place I've got Charleston Southern. Maybe a little bit unfair. They were playing a nationally ranked Campbell team, but they are also on a 3-game losing streak. And I just think Winthrop played a little bit better than the Buccaneers did during this past week. Moving on to NCAA Division II, North Greenville. Big news, they lost a series. They had won 16 consecutive Conference Carolina series and 30 consecutive series overall before losing 2 of 3 to Mount Olive this past weekend. The Crusaders are still 31-4. Their loss to Mount Olive in the middle game of the series ended a 17-game winning streak for them, and then they lost the finale on Saturday to drop their series. Of course, 2-2 week, still 31-4. They've got I believe it's a 4.5-game lead over UNC Pembroke and Mount Olive, whom they've already played in the Conference Carolina standings with just like 3 weeks to go in conference play for the Crusaders. In second place is Newberry, which is leading the South Atlantic Conference. They had a 4-0 week. They also swept Emory and Henry on the road, as I mentioned earlier, to give Coach Triplett his victories record. They are ahead of Lenore Ryan and Catawba by 1 game. I believe that Carson Newman is 2 games back and Wingate is 3 games back. So that's going to be a pretty good race moving down to the end of the season. USC Aiken got a series sweep at Claflin, not really unexpected. They are still ahead in the Peach Belt Conference. They're up by 1.5 games over Young Harris College, but Young Harris has 3 more games to play than Aiken, and so theoretically, that Young Harris could catch up with it pretty soon. Erskine got a win over UNC Pembroke in game one of their series, but then lost a couple of games on Saturday. The second game was really the whole day Saturday was kind of disrupted by rain a little bit. It turned out to be a long day. Francis Marion has moved up to fifth in my rankings. They were 4-0 this past week. They got 2 walk-off wins over Southern Wesleyan on Friday night in a conference doubleheader. So that was good for them. They're within one game of 500 now, so I know they're feeling better about the way they're playing. Meanwhile, Anderson went 0-4 this past week, and they're out now on a 5-game losing streak. They've dropped to 6th. 7th is Coker. They were also 0-4 last week and had a 4-game losing streak, or on a 4-game losing streak. Ditto for Lander. They had a tough loss on Sunday. They were down 9-8 going to the top of the ninth. Scored a couple runs to go up 10-9, and then Augusta scored 2 runs in the bottom of the ninth to win it 11-10. The Bearcats are on a 4-game losing streak. USC Beaufort lost all 3 games at Flagler in Peach Belt Conference play. They're now have lost 5 straight. Southern Wesleyan also went 0-4 last week, and they've lost 5 straight. Limestone got a win over Erskine, but then was swept by Mars Hill in South Atlantic Conference play. Benedict got 2 wins over Morehouse on Sunday. The games were high scoring, 14-4 in game 1, 21-14 in game 2. And a nice little tidbit was that Benedict finally got its online video streaming situation squared off. They got to, I watched some of both games, had play-by-play. It wasn't just a camera. They also had at least 2 cameras shooting there. And it was nice to be able to follow Benedict game in person as opposed to maybe just looking on Game Changer or waiting until the games are totally over to find out what was going on. Claflin, as I mentioned earlier, has lost 28 straight games. They're still 13th in my ranking. Over to the NCAA Division III and National Christian College Athletic Association teams. Just kind of lumped them all together. Columbia International had a 17-12 win over St. Andrews on Saturday for its only win of the week. They're now 9-22. Morris lost a couple of games to Benedict earlier in the week. They are now 4-16. Voorhees did not play last week. And Bob Jones went 0-3. They lost a game midweek to, I believe it was Truett McConnell. Then they were swept by Milligan on Friday, and they chose not to play their Saturday game thinking the weather was going to be bad. So that's that division. And NJCAA is pretty much the way it has been for a while. Florence Darlington Tech is still number 1 in my rankings, followed by USC Sumter, which has won its last 4 games. Spartanburg Methodist moved back ahead of USC Lancaster this week. SMC got a couple of nice wins over a top 10 team in Gaston College on Saturday before Gaston College won both games on Sunday to split that series. USC Lancaster, which had won 3 of 4 against Spartanburg Methodist a week previous, is now on a 5-game losing streak. They got swept by Florence Darlington Tech this past weekend. USC Union got 3 wins this week against USC Salkehatchie, and those 2 close out the remainder of the junior college rankings. Moving on to the schedule for this coming week. On Monday, the Conference Carolinas JV tournament, if you will, it's a developmental tournament. Developmental teams, as they call it. They're going to be having a tournament playing in Due West and at Belmont Abbey. They'll have a situation where they have 1 winner from each location go on to play at Francis Marion on April 17th for the Developmental Team Championship of Conference Carolinas. Also going on Monday, Morehouse and Benedict close out their conference series at 11 o'clock. It'll be interesting to see if the Tigers can get a sweep. I'd have to look back to see the last time they had a sweep in the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. And Wingate and Coker had moved 1 game of their series over to Monday, also because of weather concerns last week. As I mentioned earlier, South Carolina is going to be playing North Carolina at Truist Hill in Charlotte on Tuesday. Also on Tuesday, Coastal Carolina is at Clemson. That'll be a nice game. A couple of other matchups involving state team. Newberry's going to be at Erskine. Winthrop's at the Citadel. Limestone's at Lander. And Wofford's at the College of Charleston. North Greenville, by the way, goes to Lenore-Ryan, which will be a nice little challenge for the Crusaders. On Wednesday, Wingate and Erskine are supposed to play at 2 o'clock. Young Harris is playing North Greenville at 6, and Southern Wesleyan is playing at Limestone. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the state's teams are playing on Thursday this coming week because Sunday will be Easter, and they want to have Easter off so folks can observe that. Among the series that are starting is number 1 LSU at South Carolina. The Gamecocks were as high as 9th in the rankings last week. The loss to Mississippi State may hurt them a little bit in a poll or two, but I don't think they'll fall too far in any of the rankings. Well, I should go back and say they were ranked number 2 in the collegiate baseball poll. That was kind of an outlier. Collegiate baseball is quite often an outlier. It is the oldest college baseball poll in the country. And I can remember probably 40 years ago, if not more, Bill Wilhelm once saying that he just suspected the people who put that poll together just sat around at their kitchen table, got a cup of coffee, and just said, well, let's rank them this way. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But, hey, some people don't like polls, but it's really just a thing to create and generate interest in teams and in baseball itself, just like in other sports. If there weren't polls out there, people wouldn't be offended because their team wasn't ranked high enough, those type of things. As I mentioned, South Carolina's at home against LSU Thursday through Saturday. Clemson is at Florida State. Coastal Carolina has a nice series coming up at home against Georgia Southern. Wofford's at East Tennessee State as it returns to the Southern Conference schedule. Ball State is at the Citadel as the Cadets Bulldogs take a weekend off from conference play. Longwood's at USC Upstate, Winthrop's at Charleston Southern, and Campbell is at Presbyterian in games involving Big South Conference teams. The Junior College Region 10 teams normally play on Saturday and Sundays, play doubleheaders each day. This week, because it's Sunday's Easter, they will move up and play Friday and Saturday doubleheaders. So that is something to look forward to there for those fans. Hopefully some folks who may get Good Friday off from work will be able to get out and see some of those games on Friday. Among the games later on in the week, especially like on Saturday, Newberry is at home against Catawba. As I mentioned, Catawba is one of the 2 teams that's a game behind the Wolves in the South Atlantic Conference standings. May be interesting to see how that goes as far as setting things up. USC Aiken, which is I mentioned in the lead in the Peach Belt, they're at home against Augusta, and North Greenville as the leader in Conference Carolinas is at home against Shawan. The only team that is scheduled to play on Sunday as of right now is College of Charleston, which plays host to Hofstra in a Colonial Athletic Association game. A couple of things just off the top of my head. I don't know if you got to see the Friday night and Saturday games involving South Carolina and Mississippi State, but there are a couple of situations where USC hitter Gavin Casas was hit by a pitch. On Friday night, looked like the guy was throwing, and I'm not saying the guy was throwing at him, but the ball was headed right for Casas' head. He put his elbow guard up, and the ball hit him right on the elbow guard. And Chris Lamonis, the former Citadel player who's now the Mississippi State head coach, went out and asked the umpires to see if Casas swung at the pitch. They went to the SEC office in Birmingham for a review, and amazingly, they said that Casas did swing. They called it a strike, or he put up in an attempt to get hit, called it a strike. It was strike 3. He was out. One of the, probably second to the bad third strike call by that umpire who got mad at the Mississippi State Valley player a few weeks back, as far as being the worst call I've seen this year. Then on Saturday, would you believe it, the same thing happened. He had 2 strikes. Casas puts his elbow up to try to avoid getting hit by a pitch, and the ball hits him. And once again, they go to Birmingham for review, and they say it's a strike. Strike 3, he's out again instead of being on base. Now, I will say that he was a little bit, the ball was probably pretty close to being over the plate, and Casas may have been, his elbow may have been hanging over the plate. Not as bad a call as Friday, but you just don't ever see that call made very much. It was just unusual. Of course, Carolina coach Mark Kingston was not too thrilled about it, but you can understand that. Just trying to think if there's anything else to be looking at this week. I'm sure there's something I probably wish I'd have said that I forgot. But if I did, I apologize. Thank you for watching this video update of what's going on in the state of South Carolina college baseball. If you like it, please share the link with other folks, let them know about it. Later in the week, on Thursdays usually, I do a podcast that you can listen to, download it. You don't have to see this ugly face. I can do daily score list, updates, polls, news, all kinds of things that I try to publicize the state of college baseball in the state of South Carolina. If you have suggestions as to what I can do to better improve my coverage, email me at rudyjones@palmettostatebaseball.com. I'm active on Twitter at palmettobase, and I try to get out to a game whenever I can. If you ever see me at a game, say hey. I just want to know if people are enjoying what I try to do with college baseball and coverage of college baseball in the state of South Carolina. I hope you have a great week. If you're a Christian, I hope you have a great Easter. And I will be talking to you later on this week. As always, this is Rudy Jones of PalmettoStateBaseball.com saying nothing could be finer than baseball in South Carolina. Good night.